All right. I'm Debbie DeWitz with the Heart and Soul Academy for Self-Empowerment and Conscious Evolution. And I want to thank you for joining me here with Angelika Baum of Green Door Relaxation for our webinar, You Are a Magnificent Castle, and How to Embrace Your Shadow and Become Whole Again. Now, Angelika is not only the first certified instructor of shadow energetics that was developed by my dear friend Daryl Gurney. She is also a belief change coach who facilitates many holistic therapies such as hypnosis, NLP, past life therapies, Reiki and Shambhala healing energy therapies, EFT, Psyche, the emotion code and hollow energetics, and the life-enhancing energetic processes of the LEAP system. I am very proud to have her as an affiliate of the Heart and Soul Academy. So welcome, Angelika.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure, a great honor, a great joy to do this with you.
Well, I'm glad to have you here. So as I was saying just before we started the recording, I have some questions that I'd like to ask you. And I'd also like to invite our participants to ask their own questions if we still have time. Are you good with that?
Wonderful. Yes, let's do that.
Okay. Then I'll invite our participants to ask their questions in the chat box, and then I'll ask them of you as we get going. So the first question that I'd love to ask you is, what is meant by the term shadow? Because this seems like such an obscure concept.
Absolutely, yes. So the term shadow was coined by Carl Jung. And our shadow are our hidden or unconscious aspects of ourselves. There's a quote of Carl Jung, yes. So the hidden or unconscious aspects of ourselves, our conscious mind is not aware of. Those could be good aspects, bad aspects. But our conscious mind has either repressed them or has not recognized them. And there's this lovely quote by Carl Jung: one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And there's a little bit this tongue in the cheek when you read this, but his point is that we really need to make the darkness, that's what's in our unconscious, conscious, in order to change our life, in order to become more whole, in order to become enlightened. So there's definitely healing there for our relationships, but there's also that spiritual growth in that, because these unconscious parts of ourselves determine how we feel, how we think, how we speak, how we act, and ultimately how we create life for ourselves, how we manifest for ourselves. And to find out where the shadow comes from, we have to look at how we're growing up. And that brings us to the talk title, actually, of this webinar, You Are a Magnificent Castle, because we are all born as this magnificent castle. There's the next slide, exactly. We come into this world like a castle with 1,000 rooms.
Okay.
And each of these rooms represent an aspect of ourselves. And each of these rooms is perfect. It's a perfect part of the whole castle. Each of these rooms has a gift for us. And when we grow up, we learn that we shouldn't be a certain way. So that's where the shadow starts. We learn that there are some character traits that are good and others that are bad. And as a child, we first explore all these rooms in our castle just with joy and curiosity, without any shame or judgment. And we explore everything. And we also find the opposites in the castle, because each of these rooms in the castle has an opposite, because energy always exists on this scale. So for example, we have perhaps a room where we're playful and lighthearted, and we also have a room where we're serious. And we might be creative in some ways, and then very uncreative in others. All these opposites exist. We might be emotional and rational. We're not just one, we're both. we're smart in some ways, we're stupid in other ways. We're honest, we all lie. So it's all there. We might be confident and assertive in some way, and then we might be shy and reluctant in another way. And we might be generous and giving one moment in time, another moment in time we might show up as sheep and greedy. Or we're lazy one day, we're hardworking another day, just to give a few examples of all those different energies and rooms that exist. And so basically we're everything. We're good and bad. And I'm doing the inverted commas here on purpose because really there is no good or bad energy. There's only energy. Every energy used with consciousness, and that's the key, used with consciousness, is good or useful or beneficial or has a gift for us. But as we grow up, we come across these people that could be our parents or other caregivers, our teachers, our siblings, our friends, that tell us that one or more of our rooms in our magnificent castle is not perfect. And what do we all want as human beings? We all want love and acceptance.
Yeah.
So we lock up those energies where we're being told that this is bad or wrong. And I want to go into some examples to make this a little bit more concrete.
Oh, please do.
So let's start with an example from Debbie Ford's Shadow movie. She has this lovely scene in there where a little child takes all the cookies from the plate and puts it on her plate. And she's very playful and innocent doing this until a grown-up comes along and scolds her for being greedy. So there goes that energy then that she had there, that greedy energy, and the room is being locked up. But greedy is, well, in an extreme, in a negative extreme, just thinking of myself and not of others, but it's also the energy of wanting something, going for something, feeling I deserve something. And all that gets locked up as I'm being told you mustn't be greedy. So everything that could look as greedy, I'm locking up. Another typical example that I see quite a lot is when we're being told that we shouldn't be loud or enjoy being the center of attention. I grew up that way. Little girls should be seen but not heard. So then what happens, that energy also gets locked up.
Okay.
But it's a useful energy. As an adult, we need to be able to speak up loudly and clearly in different situations. Very handy, actually. So I don't know, have you got some examples as well? I've got some more, but maybe something's coming to your mind.
Oh, I would love to hear what you've got on this. Yeah, and just kind of focus this, for the most part, on you and what you have to share with us.
Good, yeah. So another example is the energy of being selfish versus selfless. So if I grow up and I learn I must always be selfless, put others first, it's always about their needs first and my needs don't matter, or I'm at the bottom of the list, then I might lock up anything that looks like selfish energy. But selfish energy, again, is an important energy for us to have, because if we're not taking care of ourselves, we can't recharge. Selfish energy helps us to make sure that we're not taken advantage of, that we're getting what we need, right? So looking closer at energies, we find that there's really no bad energy. Every energy has a purpose, has a gift in it. And what we want is a conscious choice in relationship to each energy.
Wonderful.
But because we all want to be loved and liked, we create this persona. We wear a mask or masks in different situations. And what we're then really burying down deep is our vulnerable self, our authentic self, because we've decided to disown certain traits, those that we've learned we shouldn't be, and identify with others. And we're really showing up just the way we think we will get attention or love or acceptance. And by the time we're grown-ups, most of us have forgotten that we once were this magnificent castle with all these rooms, with all these possibilities. So that gets us into looking at our shadows and starting to unlock these rooms, because we all have dark shadows and we have light shadows.
Okay.
And that's an interesting difference, because the dark shadows are all those things that we judge in others, where someone else triggers us, where we're bothered or annoyed by somebody. And we all have these dark shadows. We're human beings. We wouldn't be human without them.
Yeah, that's true. I know that recently I've just been triggered and I had to sit back and look at what was triggering me around that.
Yes, for sure. It shows up all the time, and we can handle it consciously and embrace it in ourselves. And that way take the charge out of the situation, right? Or we can continue being triggered. So it's really that choice. So those are the dark shadows. And we also all have light shadows.
Okay.
The dark shadows is what we judge in others. And that those dark shadows stand between us and our ability to love ourselves and others unconditionally. But we also have all light shadows. And light shadows is what I'm admiring in others. And again, I think I'm not that. So if you have a role model and you think of the character traits that role model has, there might be some that you identify with, but there might be others where you feel that you are not that. And again, we can embrace this. And people usually understand that it makes sense to embrace your light shadow, because it will help us to become more like our role models. But it's sometimes hard to understand why we also want to embrace the dark shadows.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. Another question that I'd like to ask you is, how do these shadows operate in our lives?
Well, because we deny we have all those traits inside of us, we can only perceive them in projection in others. Those negative traits, right?
Yeah.
So when we see someone else being what we perceive as wrong or bad, we judge them. And the more disconnected we are from our traits, the more adamantly we might be judging those traits in others. And that means mirrors are showing up.
Okay.
And mirrors show up in different ways. So there's a mirror, right? A straight mirror. I'm looking at someone else and they're showing me what I am as well, but I'm unaware of it. But there's actually 7 different ways mirrors can show up. And I'm going to go into this a little bit because I think we have the time.
Oh, yeah.
So a straight mirror would be, let's say I have a person who talks a lot and they're coming across another person who's a talker. And suddenly we find the first person judging the other one for talking so much, taking up so much room, being so self-centered. And they're completely unaware that they're a talker as well. So looking at it from the outside, it's quite funny because everybody else can see they're a talker, but they are not aware of it. So that would be like the straight mirror. Someone else shows to us what we don't realize that we are. The second mirror would be someone mirrors to me what I've completely disowned. So to go back to our example with the selfish energy, if I've completely disowned any selfishness, I'm always just about putting others first. I've got a bit of a pleaser personality, perhaps. Then people who show up as more selfish would trigger me, and I would judge them for being so selfish, because it's really my relationship with that selfish energy that I need to look at.
Okay.
Right?
Oh.
So then a third mirror is someone can reflect to us what we have lost. So let's say something from our childhood, like being playful. And then we grow up and we're being conditioned into being more serious. So the playfulness could then show up either in someone being playful and we're attracted to it, or someone, or us judging someone for being so silly and not serious. But it's really an energy that we've lost, that we had originally. Mirror number 4, somebody reflects to us what's called our most forgotten love. That could be a way of life or relationship. So, for example, siblings. The one sibling is over-identified with responsibility, and then the other sibling mirrors to the first one, to the older one, how to live life, being carefree, adventurous, so completely different lifestyle. And then you might again find that there's a trigger, there's a judgment there. So it's really about looking at that lifestyle and seeing what do I need to embrace from that.
Okay.
I've got 3 more mirrors. Mirror number 5 is that someone reflects our mother or father to us. So let's say I had a critical father growing up, that then might again show up as an adult with someone being critical, and it could trigger me because it really reminds me of my father, of that upbringing. Mirror number 6. Someone could reflect our greatest challenges or fears. So if we have a certain fear and someone shows up and shows the same fear or overcomes that fear, there again is then a mirror for us. And mirror number 7 reflects our self-perception. So it doesn't reflect what we really are, but how we see ourselves. So if we, for example, feel we're stupid, then someone else might reflect that to us. Or we feel we don't have high respect for ourselves, and then someone else shows up and treats us with lack of respect. Or so it's quite interesting how these mirrors aren't necessarily straight mirrors. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we need to sit with it a bit and see, okay, where's the mirror here? What's going on for me with that energy that's showing up? What's my relationship with that energy?
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. Why would I want to embrace my shadows, especially if there are things that I'm wanting to judge in others or I'm not liking them in others? Why would I want to embrace those shadows?
That is a good question, because all energy that's out in the world is also inside of us. And it's a little bit like we're having a whole herd of wolves inside of us, to use Debbie Ford's example of the black wolves and the white wolves. So this pack of wolves exists with white wolves, and those white wolves are all the things that we like and love about ourselves. So we're so smart and so helpful and so creative, all the wonderful things that we are. But we also have all these black wolves in our herd. And the black wolves are those traits that we don't like about ourselves, that we've disowned as bad. And for example, angry energy, if we've learned it's bad to be angry. Now, the trouble is when we only feed the white wolves and try to starve the black wolves will wait for an opportunity to attack. This energy grows a life of its own. Mm. So to say with the example of anger, if I've disowned all my anger, it can either explode in me, or I might draw angry people into my life because it's all energy, and that's how energy works. So integrating our shadows moves us actually into wholeness, into unconditional love of ourselves. We're separating from that inner critic voice, that nagging little voice that we all have that says that something is wrong with us for being a certain way or feeling a certain way, behaving a certain way. And as we find separation from the inner critic, we become gentle with ourselves, which is very beautiful and healing. And we become gentle with others. We develop that natural compassion for others. And because as we accept all traits inside of us, we automatically accept them in others. It's not hard then to accept all those flaws and imperfections in others, because we can release all judgments and projections. And when I embrace all traits in me, I become a master at loving myself. And I also become a master at loving others unconditionally. So then I can look at my parents, my partner, my children, my family members, my friends, my colleagues, and I can be completely non-judgmental and truly loving with them. So be really truly heart-centered.
Ah,
Yeah, and
that's
as others feel
beautiful.
our love and acceptance, it gives them permission to be their authentic selves because they can feel they won't be found wrong. So then what happens is their walls come down or their masks come off. They have permission to be authentic. They have permission to shine their own light. So it's quite beautiful.
I think that's something that the world really needs at this time, isn't it? A lot of healing and allowing us greater self-love, greater compassion and understanding.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wonderful. All right. So another question would be, what is shadow energetics then? That was founded by Daryl Gurney. And what would participants of the shadow energetics workshop learn?
Right. Okay. So shadow energetics is a unique combination of shadow work in the tradition of Debbie Ford, combined with elements from hollow energetics that Len Lesko created, plus the system of personality parts that Helen Sidra Stone used. They based their work on primary versus disowned personality parts, and the disowned personality parts are our shadows. So Daryl has developed the system, our friend Daryl, and I think you were actually part of creating it, right? So you can speak a little bit to that in a moment. And he's been in this field for 25 years. He's an amazing healer, a beautiful, loving person. And it took him quite a while to create all this. It was all guided. So with each of these processes, he had that guidance of how he needed to do it, that guidance from the higher self. The workshop is packed full with beautiful processes. We're doing way more than just shadow work. We're of course embracing the dark shadows and the light shadows. There is an emotional release process in it, because emotions are one of those factors we need to look at. There is a process in it that helps you to embrace, that helps you to change your beliefs at a subconscious level. We're doing some inner child work. We're doing dream interpretations because, again, dreams give us beautiful messages from our subconscious mind and our higher self. So if we listen to those messages, we're really tapping in and making the unconscious conscious. We're looking at human needs and better communication. So the workshop is, these 4 days are packed with fantastic things. Sometimes people take the workshop just for their own healing, because personal healing definitely happens. But some people also take these for their own healing and then to use the techniques with their own clients. So it's more than just learning the techniques. It's definitely when you're ready to do some more healing work for yourself, then the 4-day workshop is for you.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, I know that I certainly enjoyed taking the workshop and got a lot of benefit out of it. And I know that you have been major host for this workshop and facilitating it. And I really admire that about you. Beautiful spirit for that. Thank you. With this work that Daryl has done and the shadow energetics that you're facilitating, how has the shadow work affected your own life?
Oh, in many different ways, actually. I've been in this field for 13 years, so I've always done my own work. But when shadow energetics came along, it really, went to another level. It starts with my relationships. It has changed the relationship with my ex-husband, with my current partner, because partners always carry shadows for each other. So we can live partnerships with much more consciousness instead of going into these opposites. Let's say one person is more emotional, the other is more rational. One person is maybe good with money, the other one not so money smart. Instead of moving into these opposites more and more, as when the relationship, we can really realize that we have everything inside of us and we can embrace this and come closer towards each other. It has definitely helped me with my children, because children are beautiful mirrors. And I'm going to share in a moment a little story maybe about my older daughter and what she has mirrored for me. It has most of all helped me with my father, because when my mother passed a few years ago, I had no relationship with my dad. But through this shadow work, we've built a beautiful relationship. And that means I was doing the work. He doesn't consciously know anything, but we know that something happens on a higher level.
Yeah.
There's a great process in this workshop called a relationship alignment that you do between two people. And to look at the chakras between us and the energy between us, the realization was that we didn't feel respected by each other, didn't feel supported, didn't really feel loved. And that has all completely changed and healed just through this work. And we have a beautiful relationship today.
Oh, beautiful.
It helps me with my clients every day. I use these processes a lot with my clients. And of course, also when a client comes in, a client again might be a mirror. So what do I do with that? Am I being triggered by that person, or can I handle this more consciously? But the story I wanted to share about my older daughter is quite funny, actually, because my oldest one used to trigger me incredibly by doing things last minute. She would always, school project the night before, she would pull off gifts last minute, and amazing, beautiful gifts, but always last minute. And it made me so angry, just watching her, no matter whether I was affected or not. And then one day, a new friend, I was talking to a new friend and sharing with that friend that I was doing a talk a couple of days later. And I was saying, oh, I haven't prepared the talk yet. And this friend says to me, oh my God, you're one of those last minute people. I admire that. I wish I was like you. And I was outraged. How could he say that, right? Me, a last minute person. So it was quite funny for me to see that what triggered me in her was an energy I had too. Yes, I'm organized and I'm a planner, but I can also sometimes do this last minute thing. But I had learned you don't do that. That's a bad thing. So it really triggered me in her because I hadn't accepted it in me. I didn't like it in me. Mm-hmm. And children do this all the time. So when you ask what your child is showing up with, are they showing up as entitled or messy, or that there's something there for you with that energy, right? To look at what's my relationship with messiness, what's my relationship with feeling entitled, feeling deserving.
Yeah. Daryl one time had me embrace one of my shadows. Man, this was years ago, and I forgot about it until you're talking now, and messiness. And I had a son that had pulled apart one of his cars, and it was all in parts all over my front patio. Just a mess. And I was embarrassed by this mess on my front patio. Everyone could see it. And so I think Daryl had me embrace my trailer trash Trish shadow so that it wouldn't bother me so much that it was sitting there. And I think once I had done that, and that had been going on for months, but once I had done the shadow embrace, I think that mess had been cleared up within about 2 weeks.
Yes. It's all energy, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I invite people to ask questions if they have any in the chat. And one gal that wasn't going to be able to join us this evening because she's in Spain, Sandra, wanted to know if she could write a question. And she says, how does one realize or recognize the shadows in their own life?
Mm-hmm. I've probably addressed this a little bit already, because if we're judging somebody, if we're being triggered, there's a shadow there. So how do I know where I'm being triggered and where it's more, it's something I'm not, but I'm not really, it's not a shadow of me. So the difference is between judgment and discernment. So I could look at something and, for example, say, oh, this person is angry. Don't want to be around that person. So that would be discernment. If I'm looking at the person and I'm going, oh my God, they're so angry. They shouldn't be behaving this way. They shouldn't be so angry. Then there's judgment there, and there's something for me to look at in terms of what is my relationship with anger. Because anger energy, again, like all energy, exists on that scale. And if I just dial up anger a little bit, I have assertiveness. So can I be assertive? Is that a possibility for me? Because each time we embrace a shadow, what we gain is that conscious choice, whether I want to be this way in a given situation or not.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Thank you very much. And so I don't see any questions yet from our participants online. So another one was from Sarah from Washington that was going to be commuting while this was on. And she wanted to know if she could ask, what causes us to be afraid of or to have a disconnect from our shadow? Is it fear or disconnect due to trauma, a fear or disconnect caused by something else? So I think a lot of that just there is just what causes us to be afraid of and disconnect from our shadow.
Well, it comes back down to that we all want to be loved and accepted and liked. So if I've learned this is bad, I would disown it. I wouldn't look at it. I would hide it away from others. So it comes down to wanting that positive attention or admiration, and that fear that if I show up with what's really there, then there'll be a judgment. So, and sometimes we develop these shadows through a trauma, but sometimes it's just simply learning I shouldn't be this way, because then I won't be loved. I won't be part of, and we all want to be part of.
Yeah, that's for sure. Okay, so when are the next workshop dates that we can get into this?
Well, in general, my workshop dates are on my website. So when you go to greendoorrelaxation.net and upcoming workshops, you find them there. And in the Mississauga area, I teach a workshop twice a year, once in the spring and once in the fall, because this workshop is 4 days long, so 2 weekends. However, if somebody gets 10 or 12 people together, I'm also very happy to travel to teach this workshop. The next workshop in the Mississauga area is next spring, because I just finished a workshop 10 days ago. We had a beautiful group learning this. And April 1st, 2nd, April 8th, 9th would be the spring workshop in 2017. So you can always go to the website and check out when the next workshop's coming up. I also do one-day workshops. Those one-day workshops get deeper into a particular topic, could be a topic from shadow energetics or related to shadow energetics. So some of the one-day workshops I had this year one was around relationships. Another one was the inner critic voice that we all have and how to get separation from that. I taught a workshop, Them versus Us, where we're looking at how we're interacting with others. Is our heart at peace or at war in relationship to others, and how do I shift that? So there's always those options as well.
Wonderful. And they can find that out on, I pulled up the address for your website, and on my website, they can also find information into the Shadow Energetics workshops. And are these one-day workshops that you're doing, are they only for participants that have already had the shadow energetics and you're going deeper into the work and you're pulling out something to explore deeper?
Yes, that's how I originally started them. And I've got one more coming up in November, which is just for people who have already taken the shadow. But then in 2017, they'll be open to everybody. So the format will be a little bit different. And at the end of the workshop, we might end with a demo of what's happening in the 4-day workshop. So it's a nice way to, stick your little toe in and just see your big tiptoe and just see how you like it and if this interests you.
Oh, that's perfect. All right. So what can somebody do if they're not quite sure yet, if they want to commit to a 4-day training?
Yeah, other than taking 1-day workshops, they could obviously read your book because you've written about lots of this. You have like a whole chapter in your book. Chapter 12 is all about shadows, reclaiming disowned selves. They could take an individual session either with you or with me and do some work. They could go to our blogs. Both you and I, we have blogs. I've got over 200 blogs on my website, and lots of them are around the shadow work and topics from the Shadow Energetics workshop. Yeah, but let's talk about your book a little bit more.
Well, on the book, they can learn some about the shadow there. I interviewed Daryl quite deeply when doing chapter 12 for reclaiming disowned selves. And most of what I wanted to do with this book, The Messenger Within, was just share with people a little bit of my journey on this, but a lot of it was how they can unravel some of the stuff from inside themselves. We've got this beautiful inner messenger that is, our higher wisdom, our inner wisdom that we can tap into and can give us all kinds of information. And I think people know that they can do that. They just don't know how. How do I approach this? I don't think they've necessarily had much of the training. So what I wanted to do with this book is lay a lot of the groundwork that they could explore how to contact this inner messenger and receive messages. And then how could they know that if there's a challenge or a problem or an issue in their life, something that's holding them back, how do they know if that's a belief? Like a lot of the belief change methods that have been going on for the last 25 and 30 years, or how do they know if it's an emotion that's blocking them from going forward, or a shadow that's, playing out in their life? How do they know how to zoom in on this? And so that's kind of what I wanted to be able to do with this book, was give them templates and ideas and information of how you can explore and really hone into what is holding you back in some area of your life and get that communication going, because that's a beautiful thing that we have for ourselves. And what this does is this inner messenger helps us free up these blocks and gets us to move into greater freedom and a better life. And it helps evolve our consciousness, which, like you were saying earlier, it helps us remove the blocks between us and others. It helps us have greater compassion, understanding, and it helps us also have greater self-love for ourselves. And that's what the world needs. It's
Yes.
all self-love.
For sure. And I love your book. I mean, you know that, but just for our audience, it is an amazing book. When it first came out, I was so impressed how much you've put in there, how generously you're sharing all these techniques. And it's so user-friendly. You give all these downloads to people that they can just download and work with, from very simple, short processes to more complex ones. And there's so much in it again. So I'm so glad you wrote this book.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, if people want to, if they can get quite a bit out of the book, that's wonderful. If it helps give them a taste of something that they'd like to explore further, then they can take a class and get support in learning a little bit more of that. I had one gal in one of my classes tell me quite frankly that the only reason she was there was that she had been suicidal, and she had figured out how to shift a belief with one of the demonstrations that had been done online. Mm-hmm. And she said that's what got her into a workshop because she was able to turn around her suicidal tendency, and she wanted to learn more. And so I kind of thought if somebody else could get anything out of a book that would help some area of their life, then that's what it was written for. And then if they wanted to delve into anything in greater, experience or understanding, they could do that too. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, the whole 12th chapter is all about shadows and learning what Daryl had to share with me. So I'm very thankful for that. Mm-hmm. All right. And so like you said, people could also learn more from your blogs at your website. Yes. And let's see what else I had here.
I think we have a user comment that came in, right? Somebody commented something.
Let me see. I'll stop the screen share here for just a moment and see if we can get another one. Yeah. So it says, I have a comment, and I've taken this workshop with Angelika a few times, and each time I get more healing and feel stronger and more powerful within myself. Angelika is so supportive and loving and such an amazing facilitator.
Oh,
beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. All right. So is there anything else that you would like to share with us, Angelika, before we wrap up? Anything that you would like, have anything more to say on shadows and how they enrich our lives?
Well, really, they completely change our life. They don't just enrich it, they really change it. They bring it to a totally new level, a new vibration level. And that's exactly what this world needs, right? That we all do our own work and go into a more loving space, because then we can all vibrate at a higher level and we can create peace instead of war and violence and all that. So,
yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's what it's all about. Well, thank you so much for this time with us, sharing your time. And I look forward to us doing this. What was it we were doing about every 2 months?
Every couple of months, yes. Let's do
and
this
explore
again.
Something more with the shadow, and have other people join in and share in the fun with us.
Wonderful.
So I think that wraps up our webinar. And I just want to thank you for joining me and everyone else joining us here. And we hope to see you next time. Thank you.